Welcome to Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, the show where we explore the real practical things that shape how we feel, how we function, and how we truly thrive. I am your host, Nasish, and today I am joined by Mike Dillon, Christian entrepreneur, environmental wellness advocate, founder of airwaterhealing.com, and host of Maha with Mike on Rumble. Mike has spent years studying the intersection of environment, performance, and human well being, with a particular focus on hidden health impacts of indoor air quality, mold, and growing environmental footprint of large scale technology infrastructure. Today, we are talking about what it really is in our air and water and why it really matters for our health and what we can do to about it. So, Mike, welcome to Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'm really glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. Yes, healthy mind and healthy life. What a great name for a show because we truly are what we think. And, I think that so far, everything we've seen here in this country, when you visit abroad, one of the biggest concerns is when you walk into other countries, a lot of the pharmacies are filled with spices and herbs and other ways to detox the body. And unfortunately, here in the United States, we focus so much on just trying to coat the problem instead of getting to the root cause of illness or the root cause of disease. And that's kind of where air water healing was born, not only offering people educational seminars and educational pieces, continued educations through Global Healing Nutrition University, but teaching people to look at plants first, right? Look at what we can use that God gave us here, our creator, to be able to boost the immune system, to be able to find the vibrant, rich plants that give us life. And, the more and more that we look at United States as this pillar of health, you start to ask, why are people in Japan? Why are people in Morocco? Why are people in Italy living 8, 10, even 15 years longer than our life expectancy here in the United States? But yet we spend more money on pharmaceutical advertising. We spend more money on pharmaceutical research, but yet we're not even in the top 10% of life expectancy.
I think that is quite of a bummer that we are all facing. But there are a lot of underneath, things that we're gonna get to know about all of this in this beautiful conversation with you.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. And before we get into it, I just want to tell the listeners that some statements reflect personal belief and experiences and are presented as individual views, not medical advices. So listeners should consult qualified professionals for medical conditions. Yeah. So Mike, you describe your mission as rooted in faith, service, and first-hand experience. What was the first-hand experience that made this personal for you, and what happened that turned environmental wellness into a calling for you?
So a lot of the kids that I grew up with, they didn't have crunchy moms and holistic parents. I grew up whenever I got sick, my mom would take me to the chiropractor or we'd go to an herbalist or a nutritional doctor. And my parents were very against giving us pharmaceuticals and my mom and dad believed that if you had a fever, you let your body run the course, don't run to Tylenol, unless it was a severe, life-threatening condition. We were always taught that the body can heal if you give it what it needs. And as I grew up, I realized that I wasn't going to the doctor all the time. I wasn't always in and out of the hospital like a lot of my other friends who were on a lot of prescriptions. And, I grew up in the 90s when if a kid was a little wild, the teachers would just say, hey, you just need to give them a prescription for this, a prescription for that. And, looking back 30 years ago, now all of my friends have these chronic health conditions. And the only thing that I can think of is maybe they should have looked at it as a holistic approach, a mind, sound body, and figured out a way to get to the root cause of what their illness was instead of trying to code it. But I also noticed that with getting proper adjustments and seeing a chiropractor, being physical, getting outside, my life is completely different than what we have in this country today, where these kids are just sitting down, they're given tablets, they're not going outside, they're not testing their immune system. And the active lifestyle, there is such a huge benefit in just walking, getting out and walking. Go and get some exercise, get your body moving. And if you look at the life expectancy of people who continue to work and people who continue to work out, they outlive stagnant people who are sitting down and just letting their body completely rot. You can have a 60-year-old that's in a wheelchair, or you can have a 60-year-old that's running the Boston Marathon. Push your body to the limits. Stop trying to, just give up on your goals and continue to get out, continue to do what it is that you need to do to be able to succeed.
Yeah, that is so true. And this idea of, supporting the body instead of suppressing the symptoms is actually very good, because the way you are saying that always running to prescription pills, it has become a trend these days, I'd say.
Yeah, not only that, but when you go to the doctors and you're like, "Hey, I just want to lose weight," there's always a pill or an injection that they're willing to give you, and so few doctors talk about nutrition. They talk about diet. They don't talk about intermittent fasting. I can tell you and your audience, I have multiple friends that I have very close to me. I've known them for some of them for years and some of them for decades. I had a very good friend of mine who did a 100-day fast. He stopped eating food, no calories, no calories. He took in his minerals and he took in his vitamins. And after 100 days, he had lost over 90 pounds. And his functional medicine doctor said that it was unbelievable, the test that they were getting with him. Quick pause.
Yeah, I mean, that is something.
I was just saying, quick pause. I'm gonna go take care of the baby real quick, and then we'll continue this. Let me just put a show on for her, okay? Give me one
Okay,
sec.
oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, okay, okay. So I think that most people associate health with what goes into their body, food, supplements, and medication. Very few think about what they are breathing like every single day. And often indoors is where they spend the majority of their time. So, what is the biggest misconception people carry about that indoor air quality and its impact on their health?
Well, one of the most important things that you just listed was, people care about their food, people care about what they're eating, the air that they're breathing, the water that they're drinking. But yes, most medical doctors who go to school for 8 years, they on average have about 8 to 10 hours of nutrition. So if you go to school and you spend thousands of hours learning about disease and learning about the body, but you're only spending 8 hours learning about nutrition, if the water that we drink and the food that we eat, they say that you are what you eat, you are what you drink. So if you're breathing in 11,000 liters of air a day, and the primary source of that air is your home, you spend over a half, if not more, than your life in home. A third of it is spent sleeping in your bedroom. So, hidden dangers like mold, mycotoxins, bacteria, off gassing, different types of chemical compounds that are inside of your carpets, your tiles, your drywall. In the United States, in the Southeast, from Alabama to the Florida Keys, we had the Chinese drywall epidemic, where there was a lot of tainted drywall that had asbestos and different types of chemicals in it. And we're breathing these things in. So when people think about health, it's way beyond nutrition, it's way beyond supplements. You might say to me, Michael, I only drink bottled water. And then I would say to you, do you have an RO filter, or at least an activated carbon or charcoal filter, or even like a moringa seed filter on your shower head? And you'd be like, oh no, but I drink good water. Well, if your skin is your largest organ and you're taking baths or showers in tainted water, your skin is absorbing all of these chemicals. And that's where we implore people to think beyond just trusting your doctor, because they're not asking you, what city do you live in? What type of bath water do you have? Do you live within 5 miles of a farm? Do you live within 2 miles of a golf course? These are all things that we have to start considering as human beings. This is not an American problem. This is a worldwide problem. the water we're showering, the water we're drinking, the water we're bathing our children in. Is the water filled with chemicals? Is it filled with microplastics? And we're just now starting to find out that this microplastic issue has been around for thousands of years, not just since we started using plastic bottles. So we have to continue to push beyond what your doctors are usually limited to and start thinking about what is it that you and I can do to become more holistic, healthy, sound minded people and really push yourself to become your own doctor, not an MD, but a doctor of your household. What am I eating? What am I drinking? What am I breathing? Because when you look at mold, especially mycotoxins, on average, 80% of Americans are exposed to mold on a weekly basis, whether it's at a mall, whether it's at their workplace, whether it's from a leaky faucet, whether it's due to high humidity in their home, or whether it's the mist coming off of the shower that gets caught inside of the grout. And there are so many conditions that mold can be misdiagnosed at, and you will be at 4 or 5 different doctors before you finally get to the root cause of what was causing your asthma or your insomnia or your sickness that had you feeling down for months, if not years, before you correct the issue.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. The correction of the issue is something that we should all work on. And what I think is so important about this is that the gap between what people are experiences and what they are being is being told is causing it. Like when symptoms are real, the source is invisible and unacknowledged. And as humans, we often end up blaming ourselves for it.
Yeah. And we've just been misled. We have been misled by so much marketing. And I'm not blaming this on the food industry. I'm not blaming this on the pharmaceutical industry. I'm blaming this on we have an abundance here in the United States.
Mhm.
And if you go back generations, I guarantee you, your great, 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 great grandparents were hunter gatherers, just like my great, 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 great grandparents were hunter gatherers. You go out, you get the chicken, you go out, you hunt the deer, you go out, you shoot the moose, and then you would eat when the father or the hunter came home with the food. We have such an abundance in this country that I think that we have systemically become overeaters. I think the biggest con that was ever put on the American people and the worldwide population is eating 3 meals a day. Some of the healthiest people that I know are intermittent fasters. They either eat 1 meal a day or they eat 1 meal every other day. And think about what that is doing. That is giving you a 23-hour window of putting your body into autopathy. And it's giving you a chance to reset and you're not overeating. But when you're intermittent fasting, you need to eat good biblical food, whole grains, meat, fresh fruit, good produce. Not say, oh, I'm going to intermittent fast, but I'm going to run to Taco Bell and I'm going to get 3 chalupas and a rice and beans and then have 3 things of soda. And I'm not saying to your audience that you can't enjoy the finer things in life, but you need to switch your mentality and try to go towards an 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, eat whole foods, eat whole meats. If you're a vegan, that's fine. Stick to the store bought organic section or go to your local farmer's market and find out how are they growing? How are they washing the fruit? Are they spraying things on their fruit to make it last 6 to 7 days longer when it's in the grocery store? When you start to make these switches, you start to notice the difference immediately.
Yeah, I mean, believe these are some things which are super healthy for us. Focusing on our diet, focusing on what we are inhaling and where we are, surrounding ourselves with all the things which are good for ourselves. Only we can put in that effort for ourselves.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And not only that, but then and focus on getting good quality sleep. Figure out, how do I separate myself from my cell phone? How can I put my phone in another room so that way I'm not tempted to be on it? and really focus on meditation and just, being thankful and being present in the moment. No screen time, 30 minutes to an hour before you go to bed. Put the phone, charge it. If you need it for an alarm clock, leave your door cracked open a little bit. Let the alarm, let it charge in another room. So that way you're not putting additional frequencies and additional harm into your body and into your bedroom. Make your bedroom a sanctuary for sleep. Turn off the television, read a book, do some meditations. You want to make sure that we're getting good quality sleep, disconnecting from the internet, get disconnecting from this social interaction of having to scroll on all of these social medias. Another part of this conversation, and I know it's not really geared towards air and water, but we're facing a tragedy in the United States where this generation that's growing up right now for the first time is not going to be educated the way that their parents and grandparents were, because their children are so distracted. They are so short span. You go take a child to a movie theater, they can't sit through an hour movie without taking out their phone and scrolling on social media and the shorts. They need these quick short form videos. These deep dives, these health talks that you and I are doing, this is where the learning begins, not short form videos and quick directions and camera cuts and cartoons that are flashing to keep the brain occupied.
Yeah, I mean, that is something which is happening so much recently. And yeah, I noticed that in my younger sibling and everybody, like the younger generation which is coming, they cannot sit in a movie theater 1.5 hour, 1 hour without their phone. In between the movie, they would need to swipe on reels and all that. Yes, it is happening, and it is so true of you to mention it in front of all of us because it brings that awareness that is lacking in so many people.
And the other thing is I'm not trying to take away from your audience and say that there is not a world where pharmaceutical can be life-saving. I am not saying that, if you get into a horrible accident, to go home and stitch yourself up. In America, we have some of the greatest trauma care in the world. But I can tell you the seminars that I've been to, sitting down with botanists and holistic doctors. One of my guys on my pharmaceutical team, he was a biochemist from India. He came to Chicago in the 1970s. He worked with Bayer. He worked with acquiring Monsanto. He came up with so many pharmaceutical things that were used in modern day science. And when he switched into nutraceutical, he said he saw so much good happening. He said, I really saw people starting to shift. And when you look at things like turmeric with black pepper extract for inflammation, I've had so many patients that have been on so many painkillers and pain pills. That's a tongue twister, painkillers, pain pills, and then they start eating a healthy diet and say, hey, why don't you try a plant based diet for 30 days? Get rid of some of the inflammation that comes from eating too much meats, cut out the bacon. Why don't you just try doing salads and eating vegetarian, and not forever, but for 30 days, and start supplementing with black pepper oil and turmeric? And next thing you know, the inflammation starts to go down. They start to feel healthier. So now they're out exercising. They used to say, oh, well, I couldn't walk before, so that's why I never exercised, because my knee hurt, my hip hurt, my back hurt. When you start to lower the inflammation, your body is more responsive. You can get out and be more active.
That is something so insightful because we are often not aware about why our body is doing these things, why we are not able to walk, and then our first approach towards is to take a pill. But then there are so many healthy options, so many real time options, simple at home options that we can do to reduce that inflammation, to reduce those things inside us so that we can be more proactive in our life.
And this is not my opinion. You can go ask Gronk, ask ChatGPT, ask Google. Of over 200 developed countries, there's a handful that are still allowed to use pharmaceutical advertising. The same way that you don't see cigarette commercials. Remember growing up, we had the Marlboro man on the horse and he was smoking the cigarette, and now they said, okay, too many people are getting sick from smoking. We're taking this off the air. But there are so many countries that have outlawed pharmaceutical advertising Not because pharma is just completely wrong, it's because they give you too much dependency on trusting treating the symptom instead of looking at the root cause. And that's what a lot of good, healthy doctors are now starting to wake up to and saying, "Hey, if we change somebody's diet and we change their sleep and we start putting them in a healthy home." There's a great book out there that's called Sick Building Syndrome. And if your listeners or your audience want a really good read, you think you can find it on Amazon, it's less than 15 bucks. Look at Sick Building Syndrome. Or I believe the book might even be called Our Houses Are Making Us Sick, but it's referencing sick building syndrome. All of the things that we bring into our home, the chemicals, the plugins, the air fresheners. There are so many things that your audience could do to 100% change their environment by right here in my podcast where I'm sitting with you. To the left of me, I have 3 snake plants, the mother-in-law's tongue. I have a couple lilies. I have a couple ferns that are in here, and they start eating some of the chemicals and producing fresh air. I can go on vacation for a week and the plants don't die. I come back and I apologize. I pet them like a little cat and I give them some water. I change their soil or I give them some feeder soil once every 3 months and they perk right back up. There are so many things that are underneath your audience's kitchen sink that they can completely throw out and use vinegar. Just go get distilled vinegar. Go to the grocery store. Look at online what can vinegar replace that's in my house right now. Stop using chemicals. Stop using laundry detergent. You can make laundry detergent at home with essential oils, borax, and even sometimes a little bit of baking soda. If you've got a really tough stain, use hydrogen peroxide, a little bit of baking soda, and some organic soap. Because our skin is such a large organ that everything that you put on your skin, it gets sucked into your body. And all of these people that are coming up with these new solutions to make your house smell greater, they're not looking at the long-term impact of breathing in these chemicals because our bodies don't know what to do with them.
Absolutely. This is such a necessary reminder for everybody who is listening in right now. And, for people who are just who have their own families and everything, even living alone. This is so important for everyone to focus and listen and be aware about because it can help them so much. I think that our health does not begin and end at our front door. It is like the air you breathe, the water you drink, and the environment you live within are all the part of the same conversation. And you have both the right and the power to ask harder questions about all of them.
Yeah, and then another really good talking point for, your audience is we really need to look at the environmental impact of these AI data centers. That has become one of my most sincere organic topics that I'm talking to people about because I do believe that AI can help with so much medically, but when we become so dependent without looking at the impact of these data centers on water supply, electrical grid issues, low frequency ohms, pharmaceutical runoff, chemical runoff, but more importantly, water pressure. I've seen so many videos coming out of people who can't take showers normally anymore. They can't wash their dishes because the water pressure has dropped so substantially. Look up what's
Yeah.
happening in Georgia right now. But more importantly, you have to ask yourself, is it going to cost more money to run these AI centers than using a human worker? Because when you look at the cost of cooling the chips, the supercomputers, the cost of the chips, the cost of electricity, that is another thing that we have to be very, very concerned about because a lot of these AI data centers are signing in these land lease properties and they're using NDAs. So they're not disclosing how much water they're going to use, how much electricity they're going to use. And what happens when a storm comes through and they say, you know what, we're so dependent on this AI data center, we've got to get power back to them before we get power back to the people.
Absolutely. This is so true. And Mike, I cannot tell you how insightful this conversation was and how much I learned. And I believe it has benefited so much to all of my listeners who listened to this conversation. So just like this, for everyone who wants to learn more about your work, explore more about air water healing, and watch Maha with Mike, or simply stay connected to you, what is the best place for them to find you?
So my Substack is on airwaterhealing.com. You can find my Substack there, all of my social media. The website is just airwaterhealing.com. We post daily content. But more importantly, if you have a question, send us an email. We respond very quickly. We have integrative functional medicine doctors that are standing by. And if you have any questions about a supplement or air purification or which water filtration system might be best for you, we may not even manufacture it, but we can point you in the right direction.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing that with us. And I will make sure to include all these details into the show notes. And thank you so much for being here with us on Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. It was an absolutely insightful and a grounding conversation with you.
Absolutely. God bless you. And thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, and dear listeners, if this conversation opens something up for you, a question about your own environment, a concern you have been sitting with, or simply a renewed sense that your health is worth protecting at every level, please carry that forward. Share this episode with someone in your life who cares about what it is in their air and water, and what is everyone, and which is really everyone. I am Nazish, and thank you so much for being here and for caring about the full picture of what it means to be well. Until next time, breathe clean, drink clean, and keep asking yourself the questions that matter.